Thank you for those who are going to join us online. Are we online yet? Okay. Welcome, everyone, including those who are joining us online for this town hall meeting. And I'm going to be watching the screen on my phone for questions or comments that are coming from people who are joining us online. So will you pray with me? Holy God, for the abundance of gifts and grace, for the stewardship of all that has been given to us, the people called Haygood United Methodist Church, and for the abundance of your faithfulness to us, we give you thanks and praise. So be with us as we continue to be one who have gathered at the table with one another, who have worshiped you, and now who share thoughts and comments and questions as we move into our future. We pray that you would give us an open mind, an open heart, open to your spirit, and open to the words that are shared and people's thoughts and opinions. May we leave here as one, and we ask all of this in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you all for coming. Again, if you're here in person or online, if you are here in person and you have a question, we have a handheld mic, and we will get it over to you so that you can ask your question so that everybody can hear your question, whether they are here in person or watching with us online. Today is an informational meeting only. There is no vote that will be taken today. The leadership board will actually vote on June 15th at a charge conference with the district superintendent, as is required by the United Methodist Discipline. We are having this meeting to take into account the feedback of the congregation before we make a decision on the future of the church parsonage. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that. There is no vote today. It is just an informational meeting. And we will, I know a lot of you got the information via email, but we will have the presentation that was in the email up on the screen after I get done with my opening comments. So to give you some background, back in the fall, the finance team and the leadership board allocated funds to the church budget to begin to replace the carpets and make other necessary improvements in the parsonage. And we knew at that time that Pastor Tammy was going to be retiring and that we would possibly have a new pastoral family moving into the parsonage. In January, when the leadership board first started having conversations with the district superintendent about the pastors who may be available to move here, we let him know at that time that we would be flexible with the parsonage or paying a housing allowance. We did this so that it would increase the number of available ministers to Haygood. At that time, we began looking at our options, listing the parsonage with an agent, renting it out, selling it to a house flipper, which did not prove to be a viable option for the church. We are no longer considering that option that we looked at. Joe Ford is going to be reviewing that information here in a few minutes. Some of the things we've also looked at. The parsonage is in need of upgrades to the bathrooms and the kitchen. The parsonage is over 50 years old, and so are the bathrooms, and so is the majority of the kitchen. The master bath is extremely small, so small that Tammy has never used it.
It's true.
And the parsonage, actually by today's standards, is not in a not acceptable condition for a pastoral family to move into it. We also would have to buy furniture to put in the parsonage. There are a minimum number of rooms that we are required to furnish, and there are currently no rooms that have been furnished. When Pastor Mary moved out and nobody was living in the parsonage, we actually sold the furniture because at that time, back in 2006, we were considering selling the parsonage then as well. Most pastors today would prefer to own their own home so that they can build some equity so that when they retire, they have a place to live, just like the rest of us do. They also want to be able to choose what schools their children go to and have a house that meets their needs. Several churches near Haygood no longer have parsonage. Parsonage anymore, including Bay Lake, Francis Asbury, Glen Haven, and Foundry. If we rent the parsonage out, we still have to maintain it, and Joe will review some of those costs as well. If we sell the parsonage, all the proceeds stay at Haygood. None goes to the district or the conference. Those funds, though, can only be used to provide a housing allowance. They cannot be used for normal recurring expenses of the church. It is very much a seller's market right now, and at the ideal time to sell if we so decide. The range of housing allowances in the Elizabeth River District, which is the district we are a part of, is $15,000 to $22,000 per year. We prepared an analysis using $18,000 per year with a conservative rate of return of 4% that shows that the proceeds from the sale of the parsonage would last a minimum of 18 years. We had this analysis prepared, and it was reviewed by both CPAs and those who work in the investment field. If I can answer any initial questions now, I will, but I would actually turn it over to Joe to go through the presentation unless there's questions. Anything online? Any questions from anybody here in person at this point?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Mike. One minor clarification. The proceeds, if we do decide to sell, our target in our estimates are that will last for 30 years. So okay. So I'm going to go through a few slides, some informational and summary information, and again, as questions come up, we will take them and move forward. So I apologize for some of the small print, but that first slide you'll see is some information, the address of the parsonage. If you see on the map there, it's right around the corner from our church, about maybe half a mile away. It is a one-story ranch with a walk-up attic, which is very nice for storage. And it's a corner lot. I think it's 2,600, including the garage, 2,600 square feet, a little bit less without the garage. And 4 bedrooms, 2 baths in the house, a half a bath in the garage, and a den, a living room, and a dining room. So, next slide, please. Thank you. So we looked, what are the annual operating costs of the parsonage based on a full-time minister occupying that, and they come in just about $6,000. And you see the cost breakdown there. And you know what, Bill? I am going to get that there. Thank you. So we took actual costs, and we had a few estimates as well, too, so we want to get as close as possible to what we think the operating costs are of the parsonage. And as Mike mentioned, these do not include any of the major improvements that would need to be done to make it hospitable for a family to occupy. So this is just what it costs to operate in its current condition. Okay, next slide. So we looked at 2 options. We looked at a sell option and we looked at a rent option. And the sell option, we tried to figure out what we could get for the house, what it would list for, and then after costs, what we would net in terms of revenue. So we actually had 2 realtors come in and give us an estimate, and the Howard Hanna agency gave us an estimated selling price of $385,000. Howard Hanna and the other realtor both said the house was move-in ready. Pastor Tammy's taking very good care of it, and again, it's in very good condition. We also paid for a home inspection. Any of you who have bought a house know that as a buyer, you always want to get a home inspection. Well, as a potential seller, we wanted to get a home inspection first to see, were we in need of anything that we couldn't see in front of us. So the home inspection did not reveal any major issues, and the other piece of good news is we got a termite inspection. There's no termite issues. And as Mike mentioned, the market is quite good for sellers right now, probably the best it's been in a few decades. If you listen to the news, and I looked up something in the Virginia Pilot, they said low supply and demand very high, the market's hot, and that's not only in our region, but across the nation, I believe. So we looked at selling at $385. We would probably net just around $360,000 after all costs. That includes costs of the sale as well as some prep, and the prep would just be some minor activities. We need to fix the vapor barrier in the crawl space. We need to get the carpet cleaned, and of course we paid for the home inspection. Given today's market, we do not foresee the need to do anything else or even negotiate with sellers with buyers rather, because it is a seller's market. Okay, the other thing I will mention is that you'll see a full 6% Realtor Commission up there, which is the standard. However, we have informally discussed, if we so decide to sell, that we may try and negotiate those commissions down so that we can maximize the value for the church, or even perhaps try a for sale by owner, a FSBO. So that's what we think is our worst case scenario there. Alrighty, Randy, I think I'm ready for the next one. Okay, we also looked at a rent analysis. Oh, thank you, that's perfect. That's no longer an eye chart. So we looked at what would happen if we rent, and we asked 2 professional rental management companies, because if we decide to rent, we, the church, would not want to be the direct landlord. We want to have a professional management company who would select the tenants for us, manage the property, manage any repairs that would need to be made. We would still pay for the repairs, but it made sense to have a professional company do that. So we got 2 estimates there, Renter's Warehouse, and then Rosenwomble also has a rental management company. And so both of them came in with an estimated monthly rental income of $1,845. Now that was based not on seeing the house, but they have access to the properties that are rented in the neighborhood, and so they did an analysis, and that came out to be the average. So let's see. So the other thing we did is we estimated that the rental lease with a tenant would be about 2 years, and that we would have certain costs that we'd pay to the agency, and certain costs which we would have to be prepared for: property insurance, which we would always want to have, a home warranty for the appliances, minor repairs that would not be covered by the home warranty. In between tenants, we'd always need to clean, potentially touch up or repaint. And then we'd always need to have a reserve for any major repairs that would come, whether planned or unplanned. So we were being conservative there. And so we thought the net annual rental income would come out to be $14,432. So again, we were doing another estimate just to see what the scenario would be if we would rent. One thing that if you've ever been a renter before or even rented your property, renting out comes with risks. You're taking a best guess as to the tenant that you're bringing in, but they typically don't take care of the property as you would if you were living in it. And so, there is a little bit of an inherent risk in renting a property. Okay, next slide. Okay, these are a few questions and answers, and I think Mike answered most of them. He talked about, we would keep the entire proceeds. There's nothing that's going to the district or the conference. The only thing is the money that is received from a sale or a rent would have to go into a special dedicated account, and that could only be used for a housing allowance. The housing allowance, as Mike talked about, would be within the guidelines that the Elizabeth River District provides, as well as what we can afford. And our projections are to make it last 30 years. Mike also mentioned that, pastors now really want to build up some equity, some financial long-term future, and they also want to be able to choose where they live, whether it be because they have children in one school district that in particular, or because, they have other amenities that they'd like to have in a neighborhood. And of course, the decision will also be made by the leadership board June 15th next week. So these are the pages that you got in the email. We also have a couple other slides of pictures, since many of you probably have not been in the parsonage. So yeah, we have the kitchen, and these are vertical shots. So Randy, I'll ask you to scroll. This is one version of the kitchen. It's a, Tammy, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a Formica countertop and wood cabinets. Randy, if you can just go down one. Yeah, that's the other end. The appliances are a bit old. I think the fridge, I'm going to guess, is right at the 10-year mark, if I'm not mistaken. Don't know. So it's been there since you've been there. Okay, the guest bath, which is that center one, nice lime green tile, and love the floor. So, and then this is the one with the bath in it. And then to the right, we have the guest bath, which, as Mike mentioned, is very small. In fact, I'm standing outside the door, leaning in to take a picture so I could try and get it all in. Got the shower sink and the bath there, and then just another view right there. Okay, next slide down. All right, I wanted to show you a little view of the garage. In the past, during the winter, we've had some moisture issues with moisture leaking in from the chimney. And this is the furnace to the left of the chimney there. And if you can see there, we've had some weeping on the chimney. And the good news is the heat and the air conditioner works just fine, but we got an expert in, and they told us that the weeping in the chimney was due to condensation. So that's one of the issues that we would need to fix if we decided to go forward. But again, in a seller's market, certainly we would, that would just be part and parcel of the sale. Go right, and I want to show you the windows. Windows are, I think, original to the house, 1968. The glazing, which is the part that goes along the wood frame, is starting to crack, and I think some of them don't even open, or maybe most of them don't even open. And they have aluminum storms and screens. And one of the house flippers, as Mike mentioned, we had come in and look at it, basically said they would need to be replaced. And then the last photo, if you scroll downwards, the den is, has paneling on some of the walls, and we don't have molding, quarter-round molding against the carpet there. And the carpet has a bit of a tear. Now, these are not major things, but they're illustrative of a number of repairs that we would have to do in the event that we decided to keep it or rent it. So just to give you a taste of what the parsonage looks like, and with that, I turn it back over to Mike for Q&A.
Thank you, Joe. you have any questions that have come up, Tammy, online? Do we have any questions, Gloria?
Mike, I'd just like to say that my house is across the street, kitty catty from there, and I am running into a big trouble right now with the doors. If you have a handicapped person, you cannot get through those bathroom doors or the other doors. And as the people that, if we're talking about pastors that are coming, some of them are older and do have some things that happen. Some have elderly parents that they have to take care of. So those are things that you want to think about, and it costs a lot to change all of that.
Bob has one in the back.
I came in a little late. Did you address the cost that we had for that corner lot?
The estimated selling price, you mean?
What do you say?
What it would sell for?
No, not the selling price. How we got that parsonage?
No, I didn't, but, I mean, for those of you who don't know, that parsonage was a result of a land swap that was negotiated by Stanley Oliver.
I can't hear him.
Right. It replaced the one that was over across the street, and we did a land swap that Stanley helped us with that got us that parsonage. So from a cost standpoint, it's zero.
Mike, if I might, the way we obtained that very nice corner lot, the gentleman who was developing Haygood Shopping Center came to us for this. The parsonage was on the other side of the auto store and very small because it went with the country church on the corner. And he said, if you'd give me that property, I'll sell you that place for $1. And that's what we did.
Good deal.
If we were to sell the parsonage, would we have to make all those repairs beforehand? Or it's just kind of an as-is sort of thing?
No, I mean, that would be part of the negotiation on selling it. I mean, in the housing market right now, that's just part of the negotiation.
Wow.
And we could put that money into it and not get it back.
Yeah, that's true. It's just amazing that you can get $350,000 out of it with all those repairs that would be needed.
Believe me, if we make the decision to sell it, we're actually going to start over 400,000.
Oh, wow. Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Two comments that are online. Denise Becker says, I suggest we sell the parsonage. We should not be in the rental business, having been in the rental agent business in the past 15 years. I feel qualified to say we are in no position to manage this unpredictable burden. We have a hard enough time keeping our own church in good condition. And then Joanna Bender says, I agree that the parsonage should be sold, not rented. Those are the only comments I've gotten thus far.
Denise Becker.
And Marcia asked the question if there was a washer and dryer in there, which there are. We would, all the appliances that were in there, including the washer and dryer.
The word under a buyer's or seller's market is an understatement right now. A boss I worked for tried to buy a house for 3 months, and he was overbid each time. And I mean, if you put it on the market for $385, people offer $4, and it's just a crazy market right now. So if we decide to sell it, this is absolutely the time to do it.
While I'm waiting for any other questions, I want to take an opportunity to thank Joe for all the work that he did in gathering all of this. Everybody has an opinion, but when you actually pull all the numbers together, it's very helpful to make an objective, comprehensive. Thanks, Joe.
Do we know what the status is with Pastor Beth?
Pastor Beth has owned her house in Richmond for a number of years, and she actually just got a contract on it, and she is going to buy a house.
Yeah, okay.
She's owned her house for a long time, and that's where she's
So there's a housing allowance that goes to the pastor, okay? And so it's somewhere around 1,800 is what you were saying a month? Is that how it goes?
The minimum is, the range is 15 to 22,000. We used 18 because that's kind of where we talked about with the district superintendent. I do know that the minister at Francis Asbury has an allowance over 20.
Mm-hmm.
I know another minister that you all know as well that has an allowance that's over 20.
So
but
that's
we feel
what-
like 18 is probably,
So if they decide to buy a house or rent a house, that's what they would use, that housing allowance. And we estimate 30 years, we would have enough
a
to pay,
minimum of 30 years. I mean, that's assuming a 4% return,
and we get 360,
and
right?
there are, the returns out there right now are way over 4%. We just use it.
Don't we have a few real estate agents in our congregation?
Have we talked to real estate agents?
No, I'm saying the ones who are in our congregation, as far as the price being, the cost of the commission.
Well, I mean, our intent with the commission, the 6% commission, is to negotiate that with whoever we pick to sell the house.
Right.
Or actually ask if they would be interested in making a donation.
Okay, but anyone who is a real estate agent in our congregation is welcome to volunteer or...
I mean, if we make the decision to sell the church, then we will talk to other real estate agents.
Okay.
I would just remind us, excuse me, that Doug Geating, when he was here, he did ask about the possibility of buying a place. He's wanted that for his family, and the trustees could not accept that at the time. And then following him, Chuck wanted to buy a place, and he did. And it was good that he did, because his wife needed that place after he died. So I think that we're seeing a trend, and you've pointed out the churches around us that do not own a parsonage anymore. And I grew up with a pastor who was fortunate to have a family farmhouse to retire to, because he lived in parsonages. I grew up in parsonages. Pastors need to have equity in a house. They need a house just like we do.
I'm going to speak to that personally. My husband's a retired United Methodist pastor. We lived in 7 different parsonages throughout our career. Before we had children, I had a wise pastor's wife tell me that before we have children, we needed to own something, a piece of land or something for equity purposes. And the reason why she told me this is because they were serving the church we went to, and she had 2 little children at home that she had quit her job to stay at home. Her husband was killed New Year's Eve walking on a dark street, and the parsonage committee knocked on the door and said, you know, Helen, the new pastor's going to be moving in, and she had no place to live. Thank goodness the community did help her find something, and they helped her even find a job. She was an English teacher. A high school principal called her and said, can you teach Latin? And she said, I don't know Latin. And he said, as long as you stay ahead of the kids, you'll be fine. She taught Latin for 30 years at the high school. And she did remain a faithful member of that church. But it was a good warning. We did buy a piece of land, and we eventually bought a house here that we rented out while we were still active in the ministry. Renting was awful. But we finally did get to the point where we had a housing allowance in one place that we were. And I tell you, it just really kind of changed our lives, that we felt that we were safe. We had something, that if something happened to Steve, that I was taken care of. And just having seen the parsonage, I will say that it really would be a good idea to sell it. Okay.
Just bear with me because I have a couple of things I want a clarification. First of all, a new preacher would have the option of a housing allowance or the parsonage.
Right, well, right now, when Beth was appointed to Haggett, it was under the understanding at that point we had the parsonage. However, we had communication with the DS already about being flexible on a house or a parsonage. You have to have one or the other.
But it's a choice that they could choose to purchase their own home, and then we would be obligated to provide them an allowance?
It's a choice of the church.
Okay.
Church has a choice to provide a housing allowance or a home.
Okay, so if they chose the housing allowance rather than the parsonage, we would still be responsible for the parsonage, and then that would become a rental property or sold or sit vacant and be an expense. Would we make enough money off the rental property to compensate the housing allowance?
The analysis that Joe did came up with 14,000, so it would be short of.
So we would be, that's what I thought I understood. So we would have a deficit from the income of the rental to compensate for the housing allowance, plus the expense of bringing it up to speed to make it a rental property to begin with. Okay, thank you.
Very good questions, thank you.
I just would like to say, as a retired teacher and a former military spouse, that it was nice to be able to choose where we lived. The district that you live in can make so much difference for your children, and I think that everyone deserves the right to choose.
Nancy, up front.
I just want to say I was married to a United Methodist minister for 42 years, and when we retired, we had no home, we had no equity. Fortunately, we had a very good friend in the insurance business who sold us a policy that we could cash in, and we got enough money to buy the furniture that we needed to set up our new house, our rental. So I strongly recommend that you sell the parsonage.
Questions or comments? One thing I would like to do, I think the majority of the leadership board is here. So if you're on the leadership board, would you raise your hand? So if you have any additional comments or questions between now and the 15th, you can reach out to any of them, myself, Joe, Pastor T. That our meeting with the district superintendent is on June 15th. Any questions? Thank you all very much. We appreciate your input.
Thank you, Mike.